Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Andy, and I'm here to talk more to you about Dante's Inferno. And as we're approaching the end of the Inferno, we are, again, going to be looking at some more of these awful, horrible traitors that are frozen in the ice of Cocytus. So without further ado, I'm going to jump back into Dante. Then I saw 1,000 faces, which the cold made so dog-like I shiver, and always shall, at the thought of them and that icy pond. And while we were advancing towards the center, which is the place where all weight is collected, and I was trembling in the eternal shade, whether it was by my wish or fate or chance, I struck the face of one so hard with my foot. He screamed at me in tears, "Why do you kick me? Unless you come to wreak more vengeance for Monteperti, why must you molest me?" And I said to my master, "Wait here for me, while I free myself of doubt concerning him. Then you can make me move as fast as you wish." The leader halted where he was, and I said to him, who was still cursing bitterly, "Which one are you who thus revile the others?" "And who may you be," he replied, "who go through Antenora kicking others in the cheek, so that if you were alive, it would be too much?" "I am alive, and I can be useful to you, if fame is what you want," was my reply. "I can put your name among my other notes." And he, "What I want is just the opposite. Stop bothering me and get out of here. You are a poor flatterer in this meadow." At that I grabbed him by the scalp and said to him, "Either you tell me what your name is, or not a hair will be left standing here." And he said, "Even if you leave me hairless, I shall not tell or indicate who I am, though you pounce on my head 1,000 times." I had already wrapped his hair around my hand and pulled away more than one tuft. The while he barked and kept his eyes turned down. Another cried, "What's wrong with you, Boca? Must you bark besides performing what with your jaws? What devil is possessing you now?" "I do not care to hear you speak," I said, "and to your lasting shame, you monstrous traitor, I shall carry back a true account of you." "Go away," he answered. "Report what you please, but say something, if you get out of here, about him who just now showed a ready tongue. Here he repents the money of the French. I saw, you might say, the man of Dura, where all the sinners are kept nice and cool. If anyone should ask who else was there at your side is that Becceria, whose throat the city of Florence sawed in two. Gianni del Solgianer is over there, I think, with Ganelone and Tripadello, who left Faenza open while it slept." Okay, so we're going to stop here for now and explain a bit. So, first of all, you must be wondering, okay, so there's subdivisions of the 8th circle, and now the 9th circle has subdivisions as well. So what type of traitor is to be found in this section? It's kind of hard to tell, just all these names being thrown around and confusing references that lay readers wouldn't know about. Well, here's the thing. This section is called Antenora, if you pick that up. So Dante's walking along and he trips over the head of this one guy who's frozen in the ice. He says, "Why are you going around kicking people in the face down in Antenora?" So, as I said in the last video, every section of the traitors part of hell is named after a famous traitor. The first section we had Cain, who was the traitor against his brother, who killed his brother. So Cain is the traitor against family. And now we are in Antenora, which is named after Antenor, who is a character from Greek mythology. He appears in Homer's Iliad, I believe, as well as in probably in Virgil's Aeneid, except I haven't read Aeneid in a while. But anyways, like most traitors we hear in fairy tale stories, usually a king's advisor I don't know what it is about king's advisors. I mean, you have Jafar, people like that, who are supposed to be, a good advisor to the king, but ends up being an evil person who ends up being a traitor. So, Antenor was the counselor to King Priam of Troy. And he was a good, steadfast counselor for most of his time there. But then, when he saw the battles were getting rough, he decided, I'd rather save my life rather than die in the war. So I'm gonna go help the enemy, the Greeks. In exchange to save his life, he opens the city gates for the Greeks to come in and attack. And so thus we have Antenora, named after Antenor, this fictional traitor. So now, I should go through the list of all of the people that were named throughout this, a little bit of a confusing part of the story. So, first of all, we have Bocca degli Abati. Now, Bocca is the guy that Dante tripped over and stubbed his toe on this guy's head. Dante doesn't know who he is until another traitor betrays him. Of course, that's how it works down here. It's like Dante, offers him, fame and glory, but he's like, no, I'm not interested. I don't want people to remember my miserable story and all that. So it takes another traitor to reveal who he is. But of course, he doesn't want to talk about any of his treacherous deeds. There's most of this you have to do research just to figure out like who the heck these people are. So, a lot of these traitors that Dante puts here are actually just speculations on Dante's part, where it's like, he hears a story from one source and he kind of takes his political opinion about it. So, Bocca was part of Dante's political party, which was the Guelphs. A reminder again, the Guelphs were fighting for the Pope militarily, where the Ghibellines were fighting for the Emperor, who was opposed to the Pope. So you had the Guelphs versus the Ghibellines. So this guy, Bocca, was a Guelph, but in the Battle of Monteperti, he was standing next to the flag bearer in the army. It's speculated that he cut off the hand of the flag bearer, letting the flag fall down to the ground. And in the ensuing chaos, the battle ended up being lost. And so Dante's saying it's because of this traitor that they lost the battle. And hence, Dante's pretty justified for trying to, pulling this guy's hair out, He cut off this guy's hand, one of his own allies, to betray them in battle. I mean, that's pretty bad. Of course, Dante, when he's walking along, he doesn't notice that the guy's, he's Bocca, but yeah, so it may seem pretty cruel and heartless for Dante to do that, but remember who he's doing it to. Like, this is a hardened traitor who betrayed his country. And Bocca's angry that he was revealed by that other guy, so he's like, you know what, if you're going to betray me, I'm going to betray you too. So he tells all about these other traitors that are down there with him. So, first of all, the guy who betrayed Bocca, the one who said, what's bothering you now, Bocca, giving away, his name, which is not actually written down in the story, is Buoso da Dera. So it was a little bit confusing to figure out at first, but Buoso was actually not on Dante's political party. He was part of the Ghibelline political party, and there was this battle, the Battle of Benevento. This guy was told by King Manfred of Sicily, and Manfred of Sicily, we are actually going to meet him later in Purgatory, so he's a somewhat significant guy, but he's basically the king of the Ghibellines. He's the leader of the Ghibellines. He orders Buoso to guard the river to prevent enemy troops from coming. But as the story goes, which this is another speculation, Dante doesn't know this for sure, but he's just kind of making a base assumption. There's suspicion that he took a bribe, someone paid him money to let the French go through this river, the river Oglio, in order to join the battle to aid the Guelphs. So, this shows, though, that Dante is not just saying, like, oh, okay, well, if you're against my political party, then you're a traitor. He's actually trying to be objective, where he's saying, okay, here's the Guelph that he's a traitor for joining the Ghibellines, but now he's saying that here's a Ghibelline who's a traitor for joining his own political party, the Guelphs. So even though it was in Dante's party's favor for this guy to let the French in, he's saying this guy is still guilty of being a traitor because he betrayed his own political party just out of a selfish reason, and that was, in this case, to gain money, whereas in Bocca's case, it was to save his own miserable life instead of being a hero. So then, a few more names appear. So there's Gianni di Soldianer, and he was also a Ghibelline, but his situation was that he was fighting the war for his, oh yeah, I'm gung-ho about the Ghibelline party, I'm a strong patriot, or whatnot, and then, after his commander, King Manfred, is killed in battle, he's like, oh, this battle isn't going too well, so I'm just gonna join the enemy. If you can't beat him, join him. And so, he's not honorable at all. He's just willing to switch over, not because it's the right thing to do, but because he wants his life to be spared. So, so he is also a traitor for that reason. And now this next guy, a very interesting, this is another thing that Dante gets wrong. Just like we saw that Dante put Pope Celestine V, who's recognized as a saint, he put him in hell when he didn't actually deserve to go in hell, just Dante just made a rash judgment. Well, here's another rash judgment. This Benedictine monk, Tesaro Becciera, is venerated as a saint among the Benedictine order. But he was a churchman, and he was accused of, he was kind of acting as an ambassador to the Ghibellines to try to negotiate with them. And for some reason, I don't know why, they suspected that he actually decided to work with King Manfred and end up betraying his party. And so they sentenced him to death to be beheaded. If the church has recognized him as a saint, that means that he was actually falsely accused. And unfortunately, Dante believed, just like, you know, we do today, it's like, if we hear some piece of news that's like, it's part of our political views, sometimes we have a rash judgment that we want to place on someone just because a news source that we generally agree with is saying it. So we do have to be careful against that, and of course Dante has fallen to that many times himself. So this priest does not belong in this hell. He's not there. He's a saint. He's good. So now we can move on. Okay, now another character is Ganelone. Ganelone is actually a fictional character. He comes from a play called Chanson de Roland. And I haven't read the play, I don't really know anything about it, except it has Charlemagne in it, who's famous Catholic king. And this guy, Ganelone, is Charlemagne's brother-in-law, and he sickeningly betrays his homeland by advising the enemy on a surprise attack. Pretty despicable. I mean, he's a fictional character, so they can make him despicable. You know, it's very easy to make a fictional character despicable. And then there's Tribadello, who was another Ghibelline traitor. He was in the city of Faenza, and he was embittered against the Lambertazzi family, who had wronged him in some way. I'm not really sure, like, what way that they wronged him, but for whatever reason, he was very vengeful against them. He was like, I'll show them, they're gonna die for their act against me. And so what he does is he goes to the gates of the city, and he leaves them open at night so that the Guelphs can come in and attack, and that family can be a casualty. And I found out that that family is actually extinct. So at some point, there wasn't enough members of the family, and the family just died out. So Tribodello, very vengeful, treasonous guy. As you can see, there's quite a range of different ways that people can be traitors. One famous traitor that I want to briefly remind everyone of in American history, probably the most famous traitor in politics, is that of Benedict Arnold, who was a renowned hero in the American Revolution, fighting for his friends and his country. But then, people can only speculate what he would have had to betray his fellow Americans, but it is known that he went to the British Army and he said to them, if you give me £10,000 and a commission in the British Army, then I'll let you have the fortress. And the fortress was in West Point, New York. And so he betrayed his friends and allies, and he even fought against them. He even killed some of his own friends in battle. And it's just a really sad thing because he was like one of the most renowned patriots, up there with Benjamin Franklin and George Washington and all them, But part of it was his wife was wanting him to get this money, like, oh, come on, you got to go with the British, they'll give you more money. And then also, people had falsely accused him before. People had dragged his name through the mud, some of the Americans, and so he grew embittered, and he said, I'll show them. And so he betrayed them. So, yeah, that's a American traitor to mention that would be, unfortunately, probably residing in the Lake of Cocytus. So, now I get to a really grisly part. This part is one of the most horrifying parts of the Inferno, and I will read it now. We had already gone away from him when I saw two others frozen in one hole, in such a way that one head was the other's hat. The one above put his teeth into the other, where the back of the neck and brain are joined. The way a hungry man devours bread, not otherwise did Tydeus, out of scorn, chew on the temples of Menopolis. Then did this one on that skull and other things. O you who show by such a bestial act hatred for the one you are eating, tell me the reason why, I said, on the promise that if you have cause for deploring him, knowing who you are and his wrongdoing, I shall yet redeem you in the world above, if that with which I speak does not dry up. From that savage meal the sinner raised his mouth and wiped it with the hair of the head, the back of which he had been ravaging. Then he began, You ask me to make new again a desperate pain, the thought of which weighs on my heart before I speak of it. But if my words will be a seed, the fruit of which is infamy, for the traitor whom I gnaw, you shall see how one can speak and weep together. I do not know who you are, nor how you came down here, but when I hear you speak, you appear to be a real Florentine. You should know that I was Count Ugolino, and this one is the Archbishop Ruggieri. I shall tell you of why I am such a neighbor. That as a result of his evil designs, and while I trusted him, I was seized and later killed. There is no need to say. However, what you could not have heard, that is, how cruel was the manner of my death. You shall hear and know whether he wronged me. A small opening in that molting place, which on my account now bears the name of hunger, and in which others are fated to be walled, had already shown me many moons, when I dreamed an evil dream that tore away the veil that hid the future from me. In my dream, this man seemed lord and master, hunting the wolf and whelps on that mountain because of which no Pisan can see Lucca. Up ahead, in front of him, he had placed Gualdini, Sismondi, and Lanfranchi, with keen and well-trained hounds for the hunt. After a short run, the father and his sons appeared to me exhausted, and I thought I saw deep gashes in their sides from the sharp fangs. When I awoke, before daybreak, I heard my little boys, who were with me, crying in their sleep and asking for bread. You must be cold-blooded if you feel no pain at the thought of what my heart was being told. And if you are not crying now, when do you cry? And now they were awake, and this time was near when food was ordinarily brought to us, and each of them was frightened by his dream. I heard them below bolting up the door of that dreadful tower. Without a word, I looked into the faces of my sons. I was like stone inside and could not weep, but they were weeping, and my Ancelamuccio said, "Father, why do you look at us that way?" And still I did not weep, nor once reply that entire day, nor the following night, till another sun had come up in the world, as a small ray of light fell into that miserable prison, and I could see in those 4 faces what was my own out of pain. I bit both my hands, and they, thinking I did so from wanting to eat, rose suddenly to their feet and said, "Father, we would suffer much less if you would eat us instead. You clothed us in this wretched flesh. Take it from us now." Not to make them sadder still, I calmed myself. None of us said a word that day, nor the next. Ah, hard, hard earth, why did you not open? When we finally came to that 4th day, Gatto flung himself flat on my feet, saying, "Father, why do you not help me?" With that he died, and just as you now see me, I saw the other 3 drop one by one between the 5th and 6th day. When blind by now, I began to stumble over all them. For 2 days after they died, I called their names. In the end, starvation did what grief could not. Having said this, and with a wild look in his eyes, he seized the hateful skull again with his teeth, which, like a dog's, were strongest at the bone. Ah, Pisa, anathema to the people of the fair land where the sound of sea is heard, because your neighbors are slow to punish you. May the isles of Caprea and Gorona move, and like a hedge dam up the Arno's mouth, and drown every one of your inhabitants. Even if Count Ugolino was reported to have defrauded you of fortresses, you had no right to put his children to such torture. Their tender age, O newest Thebes, made Brigada and Ugitone, and the other 2 named in my song above, all innocent. Wow. Pretty horrific stuff there. Cannibalism. So, first of all, from what you hear from Ugolino, it makes it sound like he's a perfectly innocent guy who's betrayed by this horrible archbishop. But in truth, Ugolino is a despicable man, and I will tell you a little bit about him. So, again, he was a Ghibelline, and he lived in the city of Pisa. He was a traitor numerous times to his political party. I wasn't able to figure out exactly what specifically he did to betray them, but apparently he was quite a weasel, because he would do a treasonous act probably to save face or protect himself in some way, and then he found a way to cover his tracks and make it look like he was innocent. And so he kept squirming out of punishment. So then, he was apparently ruling the city of Pisa alongside his nephew, and so he wanted to get rid of his nephew. There was this really evil, corrupt archbishop, so another corrupt churchman, just like we have today, unfortunately. So Ruggieri worked with Ugolino to betray his nephew and get him out of the way so that Ugolino could become the big overlord over all of Pisa. And so he became the ruler. But then, Ugolino, in a way, betrayed Ruggieri when he killed Ruggieri's nephew during a riot. And so Ruggieri, of course, was very angry, and even though he was an archbishop who should have been forgiving, he instead took his revenge, and he locked Count Ugolino in the Tower of Muda. That sounds like a pretty forbidding name, huh? So he locks him in this tower, along with his sons and grandsons, which Dante doesn't even mention. Dante kind of makes it sound a little bit nicer than it actually was, because it was his sons and grandsons that were locked in that tower with him, and then Ruggieri threw away the key, threw it into the river, and let them all starve to death in there. The boys, the men who are in there with him, his sons and grandsons, are saying, "Father, please eat us and put us out of our misery." But he doesn't. He lets them live, and so they all starve. And then at the end it says, "In the end, starvation did what grief could not." So, people speculate, what does that last line mean? Well, there's two speculations. One is the least gruesome speculation, which is basically just that he died of starvation, is all it was saying. The other speculation, which is more popular and more fun amongst people who have gruesome minds, said that that means that he went ahead and he ate his kids. If that's true, then that kind of... there was one professor who gave a talk that I listened to on a CD that compared this to the sacrament of the Holy Eucharist. Catholics, we believe that when we go to Mass, that we are actually eating Jesus' literal flesh and blood, but it's because he gave himself up for us. And he said that if we don't eat his flesh or drink his blood, then we have no life within you. Which sounds gruesome, but he allows it to retain the form of bread. It's what gives us life. It's the new manna, like the manna in the desert. So Jesus died and gave himself to us. He's the benefactor, and we're the ones who are benefiting from it. However, it's the opposite with Ugolino and his sons, because the father is supposed to lay his life down for his children, but in this case, the father is benefiting from the deaths of his sons. Whether or not Ugolino is guilty of cannibalism, he certainly was a traitor, and he was very bitter, vengeful traitor as well. Instead of being a Christian a Christian would have said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." But he was like, "This monster Ruggieri, I can never forgive him." And so for all eternity, he's eating the Archbishop's brains. Pretty gruesome image. Just gnawing on his brain for all eternity. Now I'd like to mention briefly I'm not going to go into too much detail, but unfortunately I'd have to say that in our modern era, there are way too many political traitors. Like, I can't even count how many traitors there are in this nation of America. I mean, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, you expect loyalty to your party. And what has been going on in the Republican Party, it's inconceivable how Republicans can just betray their party, like, so unabashedly. As I've heard on the news that in Texas, the Attorney General of Texas actually came on the news, and he explained that 8 out of 9 Republicans, they voted to allow voter fraud. They voted to take away the Attorney General's right to prosecute voter fraud. How is that? How can anyone think that's excusable? Like, whether you're a Democrat, a liberal, or anyone, if you are an American, you believe in fair elections, right? So why would you just blatantly just say, yeah, let's just allow people to commit voter fraud crime? Like, what the heck? What are these traitor Republicans thinking? Not only do they betray their party, but they're also betraying their country as well. And one thing I have to be clear on, though, is that if you decide to ditch your party and leave to the opposing party, it does not necessarily mean you're a traitor. To be in a sin of treason, it has to be something that, it has to be for selfish reasons. Whether it's for revenge, or money, or to save your own skin, those are reasons for a true treachery. But if you leave your political party because your eyes have been opened and you've realized that your party is wrong, then you are not a traitor, because you are being honest and just. You are fighting against evil. Whereas if you're a traitor, you're only looking out for your own selfish benefits. One example we find in Scripture of someone who could have been considered a traitor by their homeland, but wasn't a traitor, was Rahab, the harlot, in the book of Genesis. Because the Israelites were coming to scout out the land to conquer the land of Jericho, which God had given to them. They came to this woman who happened to be a prostitute of all people, a sinner of a woman, but they said, don't tell people about us and we'll spare your life in the name of our God who's giving this land into our hands. And then she basically was like, well, okay, yeah, I mean, these people, they must have God on their side, and so I'm going to choose to follow God because my own people are evil. She recognized that, she probably recognized, I'm a sinner, I've done a lot of bad things, and my people, are despicable people. I don't want a part of this anymore. And so she was left alive, and she had children, and she ended up being an ancestor of Jesus. So it goes to show that not all people who change party lines are necessarily a traitor, but only if it's for a selfish reason. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a bit of a longer one. The next section is going to be a lot shorter. But yeah, so whatever you do, be a strong American patriot. Do not bow down to stupid ideas like Americans are evil, racist white men who want to enslave people, and that's what Americans all about. And we need to fight alongside the Muslim Brotherhood and say, down with America, because America is an evil right-wing country. Don't buy a bunch of that baloney. Just, even if you think that, there are things in the past that were wrong with America, no country's perfect, but this is our nation. This is where we call home, and this is the land of the free and the home of the brave. So be an American patriot, or if you're from another country, be faithful to your country and be patriotic. So, whatever you do, stay out of hell, okay? Goodbye.